CP Sunrise, what is going on, everybody? It's Nathan, Dr. Fynan, and Jaime, and we have another guest coming here a little bit later. But man, we're already at week 3 for our talk, Sex, Let's Talk About It from CP Sunrise. And you guys know, this week we're all about the Q&A. Everything we've been talking about self-esteem, sexual self-esteem. Last week, you guys watched me walk through a process. Boy, howdy, I'm glad we're not doing that this week. I think I can only take it 1 week at a time, right? But we want to answer your questions because we've got professionals here. We've got people that are living with cerebral palsy, so we know what it's like. And talking about things, man, it's super important because the more we talk about it, the more normal it becomes. And all this stuff is a normal part of life, regardless of disability or not. And with that, I will pass it on to my co-host. So Michelle and then Jaime, what are you thinking tonight as we enter part 3?
Well, I'm just thinking that, you mentioned you're glad you're not going through that process again, but I think that speaks to the fact that this is often an uncomfortable topic, So we all need to be aware of our own stuff bubbling up to the surface. Whenever we're talking about self-esteem, we're talking about sexual self-esteem, especially if those things are triggers for you, So I just want to preface it with that. Recognize what comes up. If anything comes up, be kind to yourself. And, we're all in this together. This is a very human experience, disability or not disability. It's a human experience. And I think we deserve to talk about it in our community here. And it's good that we're talking about it because people with disabilities are sexual beings too, because we are human after all. So that comes up for me. And it is hard work, but we're choosing our hard work, right? It's hard to not talk about it. And then it's hard to talk about it. So I appreciate everyone who is here to listen in, to ask questions, and to choose the path of looking at these things a little bit. So with that, I'll pass it off.
Okay. Hi, everyone. As you know, I'm the founder of Cerebral Palsy Sunrise, and I just want to say a huge thank you to Nathan and Dr. Fynan because one of the toughest things about managing an active online group is finding new resources, new people, and new content. And we couldn't be more pleased with the response that we've gotten and just the overall quality of the content that you guys have been able to contribute in this series. So thank you very much for that. And CP Sunrise is a little over a year old, and one of the most commonly asked questions, no matter what the day of week or time of day, is questions concerning love, relationship, body image, and sex. So I think we're really in the right place. And as you know, we cater specifically to adults with cerebral palsy, ranging in age from 18 to 73. So in that kind of group of people, there's everything from people who have been married, divorced, dating, to people who, have had somewhat of an asexual life and have opted not to date. And it really is, quite a number line. So I think one of the things that really came into focus for me as I watched the two of you in the first 2 parts was that we have active contributors in the group who are all over that number line. So it's pretty interesting to see. We have just under 800 members, and I think that's a really good sampling for our particular, I guess you'd say, disability group. But I think that our group probably mirrors a lot of the other adult disability groups out there, whether it's CP or muscular dystrophy or MS or anything like that. So I'm excited to get started tonight and see what everybody has to say.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Jaime, because without you and your idea, right, this wouldn't even be existing. So all of us owe Jaime some gratitude there for sure.
Thanks, guys. I can't believe it's been a year already, but it has.
Wow.
Yeah. I just want to do a quick shout out to everybody who's been leaving comments right now. So we got Anna, Michael, Jill, Kimberly, Mary Lou. Yeah. Oh, nice, Kimberly, making a children's book. That's amazing. So I'll get us started with the question.
Okay.
And so I've got spastic diplegia, cerebral palsy, right? So I'm tight all the time. And one of the things that I worry about when it comes to sex is like, am I going to pop my hip out of place? And so I know from our conversations, you did your whole dissertation about this, about positioning. So if there's somebody out there like me, because I'm sure there's plenty of people in the group with the same type as me, what can I look for? How can I better position? So I eliminate that fear and I enjoy the experience.
Right. I love that we're diving right in. That's totally my style. And I think that it's so important for us to recognize what are our fears. So if you are just kind of catching our talks for the first time, a little bit about me is that I don't have cerebral palsy, but I do have osteogenesis imperfecta, which is a brittle bone disease. And because of that, I have had like around 38-ish fractures. I was in a wheelchair for a significant portion of my life, using other mobility devices too. And so there are a lot of fears just of the physicality part. So I can completely appreciate where you're at with that. And my whole reason, well, one of my main reasons for diving into just clinical sexology in general was for myself, my own like questions, and just wanting to be able to support other people in having those questions answered. So like you said, I did do my dissertation on positioning. It was Sex and Disability, the Art of Creative Positioning, because oftentimes we are having to be creative. So with this fear of possibly popping out your hip, some of the first questions that I would ask is like, okay, sometimes our fears are there and they have like really big nuggets of like truth attached to them, which make them feel like absolutely real. But then other times, as we kind of sit with the fear, we can recognize that maybe there are other possibilities of why that's there. So, and this is for everyone. So if there is a fear of, getting hurt, for me, it was like, well, I get hurt, like just from like a hug here, like I'm popping ribs. So like, so this is a reality. So with you, Nathan, has your hip ever popped out of place just in general?
Luckily, no.
No. Okay. Now that doesn't mean this is an unrealistic fear.
Yeah, it's right there.
Right. So it's a concern for a reason. Yeah. And I think we all have these concerns for reasons, but we can sit there and de-escalate the fear a little bit by saying, well, it hasn't popped out. So, it's good that it's on my radar. Fear is a protective mechanism, but is this fear enough to make me never try? you know? And at different points in your life, for everyone, fear can be enough to make you never even want to try.
Absolutely.
So just to kind of get into the positioning part, we would be looking at, okay, it would be similar for anyone who has maybe had a hip replacement or anything like that, where the ligaments are lax. There's possibility of this popping out, and we certainly don't want that to happen. Although it makes for a great story to talk about later, does it not?
Yeah, it would.
So I don't know about great story, but you know. So you would want to be looking at side lying positions where the hip in question would be the one that is placed on the bed or the floor or wherever it is that you're planning to have this escapade. So you want that hip to be supported, side lying. That takes away the possibility of gravity, like if you were to be on your back, gravity kind of working against you, and it puts the support on that side. And I would say that for people who deal with spasticity, maybe more on one side versus another, you want to free up the side that is more free to be used for however you want to use it. So that would be one of my suggestions just for the actual how-to. But there's probably more to be discussed with just the fear, you know, because I think that can really kind of get more in our way at times than the actual physicality.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. And let me, Andy is joining us, so let me bring him up because I know he'll have stuff to add.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, Andy.
Hey. Long day at work. I'm sorry. And I was trying to get off the call and I was like, oh, my boss is not going to like this. But I'm here and I love that I rolled in right when we were talking about spastic sex. I was like, this is perfect. Yes.
Perfect timing, really.
Perfect. Yes. Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, so this is the first time that the CP Sunrise community is even getting to know you, Andy. So if you want to take a minute and introduce yourself, and then we'll dive right back into the conversation.
I would love that. Hi, guys. It's so good to be here. As you can see by my background, I'm a very colorful, interesting, dynamic, kooky person. I identify as someone with spastic CP, mostly in my legs. I'm LGBTQ, and I'm also a diversity and inclusion subject matter expert. So I really talk about all things related to LGBTQ-ness, disability, sex, relationships, just being fabulous on wheels, and using your disability as an asset instead of a hindrance. Disability is sexy and it's interesting and different, and people just need to get over it and accept it as part of a way of life, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining, Andy.
Of course. It's CP month. I had to. I was like, you're doing what? Without me? No. I was like,
this guy. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Andy, we have members who were specifically asking about the experience of being in the LGBTQ community. So we're so happy that you're here to provide your perspective when it comes to that. Yeah, absolutely. Having a disability is sexy. It absolutely is. We talk about that every week.
We sure do.
So, Nathan, I have to brag about your feet for a minute because they are very attractive.
Well,
Look at Nathan just shaking his head.
I know Nathan
good.
knew what he was getting into, so he can't like raise an eyebrow to me, Nathan, because you knew.
okay, so what does that have to do with today's conversation? That's all I want to know.
Okay, because most people with CP or wheelchairs, they have some hesitations when it comes to the lower extremities. I myself never wear shorts because I have one leg that's shorter than the other. And one of the things that drew me to you right away, made me like you, but made me hate you a little bit too, was I saw your feet and I was like, how dare he have nice feet? Because mine look like talons, right? They were like little claws, raven claws, because, of my spasticity. So it was one of the things that I was like, how dare Nathan have such attractive feet? So that's the first thing I saw of you. And yeah, and we've been friends ever since. But yes. So that's why I brought it up, Nate.
Well, and I actually love that now just because it brings up a great point of what other people find attractive.
Yes.
Is so different and unique to each person. And I think let's go there for a second. So Michelle, you and I have talked about this, and probably at some point I've talked to Andy and Jaime about this a little bit, but I'm curious, and I'd love to hear from anybody that's watching with us live, when you think of attraction and something that's attractive, what's an attractive quality that you find in another human being or your partner?
I love that question. When it was posed in our previous talks, Nathan, it was just so eye-opening for me. And even just with Andy, what Andy just shared, it was like, disability is sexy, but also I have talons and I don't wear shorts, so we as people, we can be out on one side of the spectrum of confidence, and then with other things, maybe not so confident. That's why in these talks, we've talked about the difference between like self-esteem and where you're at today and sexual self-esteem, because that can be different. And, your confidence as someone in a relationship is like another layer. So there's a bunch of different layers to us as human beings. So I think that if we allow the label of disability to be the only way that we look at ourselves, we're really limiting the way someone could appreciate all of the layers.
I mean, I don't want to brag on myself, but I will.
Do it.
I have some attractive qualities, and so I tend to focus, anything above the chest, I'm like, that's mine, baby. You can't touch that. I have good hair.
We all have guns, just for the record. We all have guns. So
there you go. Guns, nice chest, good shoulders, got the chin. I'm like, I'm there. Right. And so if I'm going to shoot for that, there we go. Underneath, the waistline, I'm just like, not everything there's good, but, the legs themselves, I'm like, oh God, if I could just, be like Mr. Potato Head and switch them out. Yeah, I would, because it's very Joe from Family Guy down there, but I'm okay with that because the rest of me is this. And I'm like, nobody has this. So, yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think that that's for anyone, right? Like there's always that thing that anyone has regardless of disability. And so we got to play up our strengths. And I think if we don't even acknowledge that we can have all of these great qualities, then how are we going to play them up? And confidence for me is so sexy. Like and that doesn't really matter what you look like to me. It's confidence.
Caring and confidence. See, I forget that we can do this.
I'm like, hey, Ben. I'm
Watch
sorry,
out, Ben.
I don't know if you're gay or straight, Ben, but I'm just saying you're cute. Don't worry about that. It's been a long COVID, y'all. I'm serious.
I feel you.
Kindness. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
Let's see, we got it blowing up.
I love emotional intelligence too. And I don't think in the disability community, I think that if we can hone in on our emotional intelligence and like figure out how we can get that to work for the other people in our communities. Because let me tell you, gay men are some of the shallowest folk I have ever met. Love you guys, but oh my God. Get over yourselves. We don't all look like Greek gods, and that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So Amy wants to know, how do you find your strengths? Anybody got anything they'd like to add on that?
Ooh.
I think practice, right? Like you have to get out there. You can't know what your strengths are if you don't make the effort to go out on a date. So, getting out there is really how you find your strengths, and you're going to fail, and it's okay. Because you won't get anywhere if you don't get off the bench. So,
I think that's huge. And as far as your strengths go, like maybe if you're talking like physically, right? Like Andy did such a fantastic job of saying like, these are things that I know to be true about myself, but you may not always have been in that space. I know for myself, I feel that way about certain qualities that I have and certain physical attributes that I have, but I did not always feel that way. So the process of finding that is to really allow yourself to get vulnerable and be real with yourself. And if you can't identify even one physical thing about yourself that you like, it can be helpful to think about people that do care about you. What have they said? What evidence, what other evidence do I have? We kind of got to look at it as a little researcher, right? To make that shift.
And the thing is, and I truly do believe this, if you think you're attractive, other people are going to think you're attractive, period. I mean, if you roll around, think I'm the shit. Oh, can we say that on here? Because I just oops. That's the thing.
It's okay, Andy.
Fake it till you make it. Because really, if any of you want to go stalk me on Facebook, I recently posted some scary or Instagram. I recently posted 3 before photos in Andy now. And I did that because I was like, this is how I used to think of myself. And this is how I look now. And that really came, it was a little bit of a highlight, but it was more of thinking I'm attractive, thinking that other people should think I'm attractive. So that mindset of attractiveness just kept playing over and over in my head. And it's not until I meet people like Nathan Todd, who have better feet than I do, that I question that I'm like, am I really that attractive? But I let it go and move on. But
you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny. That would never cross my mind. As a feature, that would never cross my mind.
But now you know.
Yeah.
Now you know.
You know.
Now you know to wear sandals all the time. Hey.
Oh, yeah. Well, now I knew that from a long time ago with Andy.
You knew.
Yeah. But one of the things too, it is really work with what you got. And I think one thing that we're all very adept at is knowing the conversation around expectations, right? And so, expectations are extremely low for the most part for us. And what I say is that's a beautiful thing. I say that's a beautiful thing because, hey, guess what? If everybody already thinks that I'm going to fail, it gives me the freedom to go try shit that I want to do. And if the bar is on the ground, there's nothing stopping you from going as high as you want.
Right.
Wow, my mind is blown right now because I wasn't even thinking like I was actually thinking the reverse, Nathan. That's interesting.
Yes, yes. And that's how I thought too, Andy. So when I heard his interview, where he shared that and then even took it a step further and said, what if there is no bar, you know? And I was like, because I don't automatically think that way. And that's why we do have to, there's so much to be said for having these conversations and connecting with other people, because you cannot do all of the work on yourself alone,
Right.
using the same tools that weren't getting you anywhere to begin with.
Exactly. I mean, I don't ever think of, like, I'm somebody with a significant disability, right? But I never, ever think of my wheelchair as something to do with my ability of self-esteem. Like, if I thought about my wheelchair in that way, as like a hindrance, like, oh, I have to, transfer into my wheelchair today, that's going to be a problem. Like, I would never get out of bed. Like, right. Like, if I thought about my disability first thing, then I would never get out of bed. Where my disability really, I see it and I feel it, is when other people react to it. Because then I'm like, oh my God, I am in a wheelchair. Wow. I come to that realization when somebody's like, oh, you're super attractive. Too bad you're in a wheelchair. And I'm like, well, too bad you're an idiot. But that's,
But we've all had that, right?
Yes.
I mean, raise your hand if you've had somebody say, oh, you're super hot. Too bad you're effed up. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, I wouldn't want to date you anyway. But thank you for that little comment. Yes.
But it still jolts you anyway, even if you know that it's their problem. Just like when you walk past a shop window or a mirror, you suddenly remember, because I know I kind of forget, right? Yeah. And then I walk past like a shop window or a mirror and I think, oh gosh, that's what other people see. Because it just
yeah. You're like, oh, I'm waddling along.
I'm like, flies out of mind,
Right. Because you can't think about it on a daily basis. Well, you can, but I think it slows you down in your pursuit of feeling good and feeling sexy and feeling interesting and different. And honestly, like, why can't our bodies be beautiful? Like, this is the question that I always ask myself. But we're in this body. Make it as beautiful as you want to make it, right? Like, that's your individual choice. I couldn't pull off a beard like Nathan does, but if I wanted to, in like 3 years, I could grow that. But, I don't know if it would work for me, but, I do know what works now, and that's okay. But yeah, I think, disability can be beautiful. And I think, the mainstream needs to catch up to that a little bit. But as long as we as people with disabilities get it, I mean, we're all attractive on this call. I'm like, damn, we're all working it out. But yeah, I'm a little jealous of your highlights, Michelle. I'm like, oh,
this is a year of not getting my hair done, and it just looks like the whole ombre thing. It's just
I'm like, but that looks better than mine. I'm going to the salon this weekend being all, hey, this is what I want. I'm taking a photo of you.
Take a screenshot.
I am. No, I already did. No, I'm like,
you got it.
Yes.
So I have a question though, because, last week when we were having our talk, there were people sharing in the chat box, which I just love, because I want this to be something where if questions are popping up, that we can answer them and we can address them. And there were people sharing like, my self-esteem is like 0, or my self-esteem, my sexual self-esteem is like 1. Like, people were sharing that, right, Nathan? Right. And so if
Nathan was one of
right,
them.
right, Nathan,
right.
So, and I think that is just, it's so relatable for me, because been there. And if people are in that space and now they're hearing us talk after maybe we've had some shifts go on for ourselves, they might not feel like, oh, well, that's them, but that's not me. And I remember feeling that. So do you remember what happened for you? Where do you remember there being a time of shifting? Do you remember there being a significant event? Was it something that happened over time? Did it just happen last week, Nathan, and now you're just riding the wave? Like, what's that been like?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously everybody knows what I talked about last week that was here. So I think that one of the biggest shifts that we can make, or one of the biggest tools we have to make the shift, is the awareness. And I think the importance in all this, and I can't wait to hear everybody else, but is the idea that having somebody else to talk to about any difficult kinds of conversations, because you're not in your head anymore, and it's outside of your head. And now I can get a perspective from Andy, who's like, Nathan, what the hell are you talking about? Why are you saying that? Or Michelle and Jaime, you guys will all say that too, if that's what's warranted in the conversation. But it requires finding people that you feel safe enough to actually have these types of conversations with. And it's interesting, because I don't know if I imagined a year ago that I'd be having this kind of conversation on the internet. So
Live.
that's a huge shift.
Yeah. Nathan, I want to give you props for that, because I've known you for like 10 years and I never thought I would be having a sex talk with Nathan Todd. Like legit. Like I never thought that would happen. And for my shift, honestly, like it's been a growth thing. It really started senior year of high school. Like I was uber nerdy guy and I hung out with the most beautiful popular girls in school, and they would just keep me around, as the cute nerdy boy. But then when I learned about my sexual identity and my like being LGBTQ, and I was like, wow. It was like the door opened up, these weights were lifted off my shoulders, and I was like, wow, I'm a unicorn, and I started transforming into this sexy thing. And it took a while, but I started wearing clothes that fit me. I started dyeing my hair, and it's just those little tweaks, right? Where I was like, I don't have to have bad skin. What's that about? And there's contact lenses. Hello. And so like this stuff. But what I would tell people, take one thing that you say, hey, if I did this today, I might feel a little better about myself. It could be wearing a crazy, snakeskin zip up, and just saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do to make myself feel better today. I'll tell you what, my clothes and my shoes, I have lots of shoes that you can't see back here, are some of the biggest things that give me that little extra boost, that when I'm not feeling sexy, that'll do it. And then the other thing, I'm going to be a little adult here, kids. So I'm sorry if there's anyone under 18 listening, but
no, 18 and over, you're all good, Andy.
Thank God. Get used to seeing yourself naked. Because if you can stand in front of a mirror and look at yourself naked, damn, I'm like, I look better without my clothes on. I'm like, this is awesome. So once you get there, you can really, it's all uphill beautifulness from there. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that part about the being able to look in the mirror and be naked, like that's huge. And I say that from a lens of going through emotional intelligence training, where one of the exercises we did was we had to draw ourselves naked and then circle the parts of ourselves that we didn't like. But for the whole purpose of being around other people, talking about that, and then stepping into what it's like to love that part of our body. because
Wow.
every part of us serves a purpose, and every part of us makes us who we are. All of us, yeah.
I'm hearing you when you do. I'm hearing it. I'm like, I'm gonna get some jewelry for my talons now and be like, I'm sorry, Nathan, go ahead.
I think that's one thing that's spot on, and I kind of want to back up just a little bit and talk to Anna again about the strengths conversation. And I think that you hit spot on with, if you don't know what it is right now, that's okay. But it's asking the people that are important in your life and that have known you for a long time. And I just wanted to offer that, to say something to the effect of, hey, you know, Michelle, I really value our relationship, and I would love to hear what you think is attractive about me. Or Andy, I love our relationship. I would love to hear what you think is attractive about me. And get several people's feedback, because guess what? Then you'll start seeing stuff show up. And if it shows up multiple times, it's probably true.
I love it.
I will say, being recently divorced, one of the things I did when I decided that I was ready to start dating again was, since it was, online was the option based on where I live and all that good stuff. When I went to start making my profile, instead of picking my pictures, I asked two very good friends of mine, one male and one female, to pick the pictures. And that was a really good exercise, because I learned a lot about how other people see me, or how things that I might be self-conscious of, they don't even notice, that sort of thing. And I think the pictures they picked were really good, but had I done it on my own, I might not have had that variety. I might not have had that, that moment of understanding better how other people see me. It just so happens both of those people were able-bodied, coincidentally. So that was also another part of it, was that, there's kind of a mutual understanding we have in the safety bubble of CP Sunrise, but the majority of us don't live in an area where we have a safety bubble of CP Sunrise anywhere but on the internet, right? Like, I don't have anyone around me, unfortunately, that's part of, the community. So part of why CP Sunrise is here is so that we could, create that community. So I guess, if you are online dating, consider having friends and family members, people you're close to, help you with your profile.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you said about having somebody pick out the features that you might not think are attractive in yourself. I know I've done a lot of leg bashing on myself, but I was with my partner for 4 years, and one of the he loved my legs. He loved that you could just throw them around and they were light, and you could just, I was like, well, if you didn't have a wheelchair fetish before we started dating, you
will now.
You're welcome.
I made him into a devotee. So, okay. But it's so interesting that he would be like, you have like these beautiful, like petite legs that are so interesting. And I'm like, God, for my whole life, I hated them. I thought they were the grossest thing on my body. But the fact that this person adores them, he was crazy in other ways, trust me. But he did love my CP legs. And I thought, well, wow. And it really made me think about my legs differently and start seeing, I'm not all the way there yet, but I did start seeing beauty in them where, before we started dating, I never thought they were attractive. Ever. Yeah. But now I only go swimming in Speedos. So it did something.
Perfect. I love that.
It's okay.
You're going to be all right, Nathan.
Bright red right now. It's fine.
I love that so much. And I just think that it even applies outside of like relationships, that often what we hide in the shadows, or like our biggest struggle or whatever it is, that ends up being our biggest strength. if we unearth that and allow it to be used for good instead of evil against ourselves, you know? So I think if we're able to apply that same principle here, where it's like, what are the things that you're just like, ugh, like, I don't know. And how could those be things that maybe people really find attractive in you? Oh, how can mental health be sexy? Anna for the gold question.
Anna. Woo!
I'm loving it. I think the more we talk about these things and how could, and when we say mental health, I'm thinking just as a therapist, you know, it's not just all the great mental health and the positive side, but the struggle too. How can that be something that we talk about, normalize talking about, and then have that be something that ends up being a superpower for us, you know? And I think that it just applies across the board here, this formula, if you will.
I think in general, us as a group are going to relate more to people who are willing to talk about their struggles, whatever they are, versus people who may not have had any adversity, because that's a common ground, even if it's different struggles, right? So, you know, you're probably not going to be ultimately attracted to someone who's had, you know, just a interstate life. In order for you to be interested in them and them to be interested in you, there's probably been some rocks in the road. So
I think too, like, this goes back to my thought about emotional intelligence, right? Like, if you're dealing with some mental health barriers, which a lot of us are, undiagnosed or diagnosed, I think you also have a level of emotional intelligence that you can tap into and sort of use that as, you know, your starting point of like, where am I on this spectrum? How can I use this to my benefit? There's so much, like, we as disabled individuals have so many barriers that we navigate through, whether it be physical or otherwise, and we're not kind enough to ourselves to say, like, we're
it's okay. I say it.
Okay, I almost said the F word, but I stopped. See, Nathan? See, I did that for you.
Oh, yeah, from yesterday, from our conversation. Don't use those 4-letter words, man.
No, because those are naughty. But we are badass individuals. And I think, like, we are our harshest critics. And we don't consider ourselves people that think we're sexy, but we are, because of the things we do, how we navigate the world. No one can navigate the world like we can. Hello.
Yeah, and skillful navigation through struggle is sexy.
Hell yeah.
Sorry. It just is. And Eric asked, do you have time for other questions? Absolutely. We're here till 6:30, I believe. So
get it, Eric.
Got a bit of time.
Yes, I'm single. Just saying, if anyone's interested, hey, LA.
Since that might have been the question.
Right?
Yes.
There we go, Eric.
All right, we got one. Never fit in high school due to that I was in between groups. I was an athlete, but had girlfriends that had me around only, as Andy said, the guy friend that was / is feminine.
Oh, Charles, believe me, I know about feminine all the time. I get clocked for a lady all the time. And now, especially because I have mask on, it's like, oh, hi, ma'am. I'm like, listen, call me what you want. Just get me what I need. That's my.
I like that.
You know what I mean? I'm like, whatever I got to do to get what I need, fine, whatever. But there's beauty in femininity. I always tell people, because there's some toxic masculinity happening in the LGBTQ community and in the straight community too. We have one image of beauty, right? And they're like, this is what beauty is: 6-pack, abs. They're built like Nathan. No offense, Nathan, but I'm like, I'm beautiful too, and guys can be pretty. Guys can be pretty and still be guys. It's okay. They call us pretty boys for a reason. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with being strong in our feminine strengths, because that's okay. I think we think men should be a certain way, and that's not always how it should be. I think we should be however we want to be and however we're created, and find strength in that. So
I love it.
yeah.
I love it.
I'm reading the other.
Yeah. So Eric says, I'm not sure how to phrase it, but how do I deal with sexual fetishes with cerebral palsy? So I think we would need a little clarification on what specifically you mean, but there certainly are people out there that just fetishize disability in general. And so has anyone on the panel experienced that?
I mean, I turned my ex into a devotee. I know that because the next guy he dated after me was like a guy that was very similar in function. And I was like, really? Okay. Well, I created a monster, I said. But I think here's the thing, and I'm probably the rest of the panel is gonna probably disagree with me. Here's the thing. If they like you because of you being disabled or in a wheelchair, I think it needs to be broader than that, right? They can't just have a fetish with somebody in a wheelchair. Again, I'm going a little adult on the group again, but I went on a date with this guy, and I'm one of those people that don't have sex with people right away because I want somebody to know my body before we do the deed. Yep. Because I feel like if they know my body, then I'm not so self-conscious. And so we hit the 3-month mark. Guy was really great. He kept talking about his mother on dates and how his mother was in a wheelchair. That should have clued me in, but it didn't. So I go.
I will say this, Andy. If the situation was reversed, I would have just thought, oh, well, that's why he's so instantly accepting, because he has a disabled person in his immediate family. So that would not have been a clue phone for me.
I thought about that too. And then we went back to my place. I got freshened up. I was in the shower. I peeked through, because I usually keep my wheelchair right by the restroom. I peeked through. The guy is enjoying himself in my wheelchair very much. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. So I make a bunch of noise in the restroom like I'm creating an accident or a catastrophe. My wheelchair magically ends up in front of the door again. And I just make up some random excuse like, oh, I have to get up early for work tomorrow. Because I said to him later on, I said, if you're into me because of the 4 wheels that I sit on, we're not going to be a match, because I don't think about it all the time, and I don't want someone to remind me all the time, that my wheels are the thing that matter. But there's a spectrum, I think, I would say.
Yeah. And I would say there's also on that number line of devotee people who may want to spend time with you because them spending time with you, they feel makes them look good or look better in society. It's not necessarily sexual, but it is annoying. And you will run into it. Again, doesn't mean you sit the bench, but it's just like with regular friendships or relationships, there will be people that seek you out to improve their image, and you have to watch out for those too.
Yeah. And Eric just said too, we're much more than that, 100%. And But I think that, like, Andy, you had that conversation of like, I'm more than that. So if that's all you're really into, this isn't really going to work out. Now, there might be other people that are like, I like that. I'm down. There's someone there for everyone, if I've found.
Right. If I bump into
Oh.
a millionaire devotee, I might, I'm sorry, but I might change my thought process. If he's a millionaire and he's like, I really like your wills, I'll be like, you can 50 Shades of Gray me. It's okay. Fine. Yeah.
Right. But it speaks to that safety thing and like being careful. And it's not, it's instilled in us, I believe, that, be careful, people are going to take advantage, or you're more vulnerable, or whatever it is. And it can lead to a mistrust. And again, it's more of an awareness, I think. And then the more we do the inner work on ourselves, the more we trust our own intuition, so that when we are feeling that something's off, because we're all like energetic beings, right? So if we're feeling like something's off, we know that we can trust ourselves. And I think too, the more that we work on our confidence, the more we know what we want. And then we're not going to settle just because we're getting attention from someone who might not fit the bill on what we're looking for. So Thank you for bringing that up, Eric.
I was just about to hit that. You hit it right there. Going back to one of our original questions in the beginning of this whole series about what do you want?
Yeah.
And if you want that devotee relationship, and that's what you want, all for you. Like, there's no right, wrong, or it just is what it is. But knowing that is the key piece.
Right.
And know your worth too. Like, know that you are worth more than your circumstance and your disability, right? Your disability is sexy and it's hot, but I wouldn't want someone to fetishize me because I'm Latino, right? Like, I don't want someone that's like, I'm only into Latin guys. I'm like, that's great. But the fact that you have that one specific thing worries me a little bit. So know your strength and know your value, because I think, like Michelle said, if you go from that place, then you're not going to end up with someone you don't want to end up with.
Mm-hmm.
And I would encourage everyone, if you've never done it, ask someone out. Don't wait for them to come to you. I get so frustrated when I get messages, and Nathan knows I get a lot of messages when people say that, they're struggling with the dating world. And one of the first questions I ask is, have you asked anyone out? And a lot of times they will say no. Well, if you're frustrated in dating, you have to let people know you're interested and available. And a lot of times, due to our disability, we need to be the ones to break the ice. So if it's something you've never done, I challenge all of you to, don't do it randomly. Do it with someone that you're interested in, but take the initiative to ask someone out.
Jaime, have you been looking at my Tinder? Oh my God. I'm like, oh my God. I'm one of those people that are like, I'm too pretty to ask people out. They have to ask me. So I'll get over that. But now you.
Okay, well, just one, Andy.
Well, and here's the thing, right? I think this plays into just the human aspect of it too. Like, I think it plays into how we view ourselves with gender roles.
I was just going to say that. So that's a lot of what I work with people, is this idea of the, what are we taught about gender roles? And then what do we feel like it says if we're the ones pursuing? There are messages that we internalize about these different things, but there is an art to dropping the proverbial handkerchief, if you will, the virtual one even. And there is an art of that, to where if you're doing that, to me, that's you initiating too. It doesn't necessarily have to be I'm going to explicitly ask you out on a date. But if you are creating a space of showing availability in that way, that works too. So if you, and Eric's asking, are there private groups for people with CP to help with this. People are scared, I find, with dating disability. And I think that that's a message that is told to us. It's something we've seen. It also, kind of circling back to the very beginning of our conversation, it has a nugget of truth. There is some, oddness that people have about like, ooh, can people with disabilities even have sex? Do they want to date? Like, who are these people?
But it's a numbers game, right?
It all works.
Just keep going. Keep going, because okay, if that person was scared, that's not your person. Move on. You will find someone who isn't. So
if somebody's freaked out about your disability, here's how every one of my profiles, second photo, you can see my wheelchair, right? You could see it. It's there. I even put the little accessible emoji with a little rainbow, so you know exactly what you're getting into. You're like, hi, no questions. And if somebody has pause and says, I don't know if I could, great, because you've just narrowed down my selection process to where I can only get the people that I want to get. Right. I don't want to deal with people that are on the fence of like, can I deal with this or can I not?
Right.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah. Because it's not going to change, right?
It's not going to change. No.
If they're not good with it day one.
It's only going to get worse from here, kids.
Of course, the therapist has to say, well, it might change, because if I didn't believe it might change, then I would be in the wrong profession. But the question is, do you want to spend your time? Do you feel responsible for changing their mind? If that's not what you're signing up for, then next, like Jaime said, thank you next, because there's far too many people in this world to be expending energy on that if that's not what you're wanting to do.
When I was younger, I was a lot more thirsty because I thought there wasn't enough people out there that wanted somebody with a disability. So I was like, I'll take anything. I'll take anyone. If they even look at me, I'm like, hey. And I actually used my body in some not so mentally healthy ways for myself, just to prove that I was beautiful and valuable. But as I got older and as I'm getting older, I'm like, listen, now you have to spend some time to get to know me before any of this comes off. And before like I give you any of my energy, it's because I know my value now. And that's the key.
Yeah.
We do that shit all the time. Like that's another level of overcompensation, I say. Like we over sexualize ourselves because of where we lack in conversation.
Okay, unzip. No, I'm kidding.
That's my experience.
I struggled with that, Andy. And actually, when I first met Nathan, I was like, hey, I'm going through this thing where I'm not wearing makeup because I'm afraid that I'm just putting on a literal mask every day. And I had to go through this process of asking, do I just love makeup or do I just want to hide? And what's going on there? But in the end, it's no, I love doing it. It's fun for me. And it goes back to what you said, Andy, of what makes you feel good. And it's not that I'm not going to ever be myself in front of people without a full face of makeup. But I mean, it was dabbling on that line and I had to explore, right, Nathan? I had to explore.
I think about it like this, I feel beautiful in this, but I don't do it for anybody else.
Yeah,
there's a difference. That's hot. Good for you. Great. I think I look hot like this, so I'm going to do it. So, because it raises my frequency and my awareness of myself.
I love that.
Well, it's like wearing this freaking shirt, right?
Oh, yes, Nathan. I can't comment. I have to be nice.
No, that's for the kids, Andy. So you're not allowed to comment.
I know. I can't comment.
Don't worry. I got one coming on Monday. I got a new one in the arsenal. And don't worry, next time I see you in person, I will be wearing this shirt.
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
Joking. Oh no.
Dr. Fynan, would you like to tell the group, since we're getting towards the end of the hour, how they can reach you and get in touch with you if they would like to, consider doing some additional work either with their sexual confidence or addressing their sexuality or addressing positioning or sex itself, any of the things that you specialize in?
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I've had such a blast talking with everyone on here. The chat box, thank you for showing up, everyone, and for asking those questions. Nathan and I are going to continue this work that we've been doing. And we would love for anyone who is looking for support in the arenas that we've been talking about to reach out and let us know. I don't think I have the ability to put the link in there myself, but I'm posting it in the private chat if any of you want to put it on the Facebook Live.
I just did it.
Okay, great. And that's just a form for you to get on our email list, get on our newsletter list. Let us know what you're looking for and how we might be able to support you better. We're creating some amazing content and a container for people to move through and get some of that benefit if you're finding like, hey, this is kind of just the tip of the iceberg here, and I'm ready to dive a bit deeper for myself and for my relationship goals. So you're welcome to reach out to us. Follow us on Instagram. I'm Dr. Fynan, DrFynan on Instagram, and I'm super active on Clubhouse also. So come and find me. Let's go hang out. Let's talk.
Sounds
good. And you guys know where to find me.
Yes, and if you go to my Instagram, I'm really positive and really sort of aspirational in what I want to do, and I'm willing to answer any questions if you chat with me as well. If there's other LGBTQ stuff that come up, happy to join again and do that.
And Andy, I know how I was introduced to you was regarding your podcast and your show there. So would you like to just remind the group what channels you have as far as your podcast?
Yeah, you guys can go on Facebook. I have a Wednesdays with Andy show every Wednesday on Facebook, and I interview Nathan there a lot, and we talk about emotional intelligence. And so every Wednesday I'm doing that, and just reach out to me and we'll continue this conversation.
Well, and definitely, I don't want to undersell this too. So one of our fellow members is going to be interviewed tonight with Andy. So I want to make sure Charles, right?
Oh yeah, Charles Wilson. I said your name wrong, Charles. I'm sorry. So Charles and I are going to be having a conversation in about an hour. So if you guys get bored and want to spill some tea with us, definitely do it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
And Eric, yes, I do. Just to answer your question.
Oh, get it, Eric. Hey.
Man, and with that, everybody, from sun up to sundown, we rise and we rise together. So you will hear from Jaime, myself. You'll probably see Andy around with future stuff for the community. Just be on the lookout for that. And if you have, we say this every time, if you have something you want us to talk about, make sure you're letting us know, because that's how we build all the conversations that we have here. Michelle, thank you so much for spending.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fynan.
Thank you for having me. The space is so great. Thank you for creating it.
I'm stealing your hair, just so you know.
Do it, boo.
I am. Love it.
Guys, how do I get in these relationships with
you know what?
people?
You love it. You love it. We're you on the inside. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, guys. With that, we will see you next time.
Bye.